All right, that's great. We can see it. So welcome, everybody. We're so excited you're here. Finley is here with us to go over the presentation of the Legislative Impact Report. They've been here with us all summer, collecting data, trying to get all this information for you to share. This is our first time that we've done this kind of report. We're really excited to kind of look back. We're usually kind of walk away from the session and relieved that it's over, but we're really excited that we were able to have Finley join us to be able to look back on the work that we did, the impact that we made, and how we can make any changes moving forward. So Finley, it's all yours.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to, the Legislative Impact Report for 2025 from Friends of Family Farmers. I am Finley. I've been the Legislative Impact intern here at FOF for the summer portion here for the past 10 weeks. I am a student at the University of Oregon. I study business and environmental studies, doing a dual degree focused on sustainability. Before we start here, I want to kind of emphasize why we did this report. Like, what are we looking for? What did we do this for? And I want to focus in on what FOF's mission is. So FOF envisions a local, diversified, and interconnected agricultural future built by small and mid-sized farms where people, animals, communities, and ecosystems thrive, and equitable policies improve lives and land for Oregonians. So FOF is focused on creating a better future for you, and we are looking to reflect what you want in our representation and in our policy. And so this is a way for us to reflect on what engaged our community and what they wanted from us and what they want to see differently going forward. So that's the key in what our surveying and this report is about. So here is the agenda for the day. We're going to start by going question by question through the survey. Then I'm going to take some key interview takeaways from the one-on-one interviews that I conducted this summer. Finally, we'll wrap up with an implementation plan. Then we will end the recording and do a questions and thank you at the end. If you have any questions throughout this presentation, please pop them in the chat. I will respond to them at the very end. So if you don't want to remember something or write something down, please feel free to do that. All right, so starting with the survey results, I conducted a survey at the very beginning of this summer and conducted outreach to all of our farming community. I did some outreach through email, and then we also did through the farmer email. We received 50 responses, and this is what they said. Starting with question 1, we asked a question on how you best engaged or felt most engaged with FOF throughout the session. And a majority of the community engagement actually came through our blog, which really surprised us. We do frequent blog posts on the FOF website, and 73.5% of respondents said that was most of their engagement came through our blog. Next was written testimony. 65.3% of respondents said that they engaged through written testimony on our priority bills. We actually had 145 pieces of written testimony on just HB 3372, that's the water rights and well rights for small farmers, from the FOF community themselves. So that's absolutely amazing, and just it's so cool to see that direct support from, like, when you look at the testimony, you can see that it relates directly to FOF. Just an insane amount of engagement there. We also had 95 people in attendance at Rally Day. That was 24.5% of our respondents, a portion of the respondents, and then of course more than that did actually attend the Rally Day. And then 20.4% of respondents said that they most engaged through hearings. We had a total of 84 meetings with legislators at Rally Day as well. So key takeaway from this question is that our written communication is actually very key in reaching our community and engaging with our farmers. The next question we did was a simple 5-point scale on how informed you felt with how FOF presented our information throughout the session, from a scale of 1 being like pretty uninformed and then 5 being very informed. We had an average of 3.88 on this scale, so that indicates a generally pretty high level of awareness within our community. Question 3, this was a fairly open-ended question. I allowed people to write in what they felt best, how FOF best supported them throughout the session, and if they felt well supported by FOF. 73% of respondents did say that they felt well represented by what FOF was what our priority issues were during the session. And then here are some of the key ways that I compiled that popped up multiple times in responses in ways that FOF supported our farmers and advocates this session. So number one was, again, engaging with that blog with our clear, consistent updates. Next, people said that our advocacy and updates on priority legislative issues matched the issues that they felt were priority to them. So the updates that we engaged with were aligned with what our community thought was right. Supportive representation of diverse voices. This one was conflicted. On one side, we had people who were felt very well represented and well supported with their diverse voices in maybe sections of Oregon that don't have great ability to be present in Salem. And others were saying that they felt that because they weren't able to engage at Salem directly, they didn't feel properly represented by FOF during this session. Then we had education and empowerment. This was people who felt that they were getting educated and our resources and guides and blog were educating them throughout the session. And I did have a couple of people state directly that they felt that this was the first session that they had empowerment and felt they had the authority to represent themselves and their community in Salem through hearings and through testimonies. And finally, we had a lot of people saying that our communication and how responsive our staff was really engaging throughout the session as well. So a key takeaway here is that FOF is seen as a trusted advocate, keeping farmers informed and engaged, but there's definitely an opportunity for a greater level inclusivity, especially within different sections around Oregon. So making sure that not just the west coast of Oregon, people who can easily access Salem, are being represented by FOF throughout the session. Finally, I asked a question on which policy issues were the most important. So what demographic of our community were we receiving responses for this survey, and were they hitting the correct priority issues? Were we hitting the correct priority issues for our community? So most frequently cited was small farm water access. 82% of respondents felt that this was the most important to them. 52% said food systems resilience. 42% said disaster resilience, and 40% said food for all Oregonians. So a key takeaway here is that these policy items do align with what FOF's priority issues were, and we are emphasizing our role in supporting our community through policy by taking the correct actions. So that was the survey. And then that was the key survey based off of a reflection from our community, and now we're going to move towards what the community would like to see more of from FOF, what we either missed or what they most engaged with that they want us to continue doing. So going forward, respondents wanted to see more advocacy guides and resources. So FOF definitely used to create more guides and resources for how to advocate and how to self-advocate and have resources to do so in policy. But because we weren't getting a ton of engagement with this, we did limit our guides and resources during this last 2025 session. But they are coming back, and I will talk more about that later. And then, of course, blog posts and transparency. This was the greatest level of engagement that we had with our community, and those blog posts are not going to go away anytime soon. The third most important were on-site farm tours or engagement in person, and community engagement in person. And finally, some education guides on how producers specifically can engage with their community to best educate them in a way that says the right information to make sure that they are saying the right things and being clear about what they are saying. So a key takeaway here is that a lot of our community wanted to become advocates themselves and be a self-advocate, but they do need the resources to do so. Next, we're going to move on to some interview takeaways. Here, I decided to pull some direct quotes from what people said. I'm going to keep names completely anonymous from our one-on-one interviews, but I'm going to read off some direct quotes and then do a quick little response to each of them. So the first question I asked in my one-on-one interview was, why were you inspired to get involved with FOF during the 2025 session? So FOF has been a reliable, truthful, and credible source of information to inform consumers on what is going on in the legislature and how it affects food on the table. This is awesome. This is a direct relation to our blog source and our weekly session meeting updates, and it's great to see that our community is engaging with us and views us as a truthful and credible source throughout the session. Policy priorities are becoming more practical and widespread instead of Western focus, and it finally impacts my community. So this relates to something that we saw in the survey where people had that split, that divide of it's really Western focused and it's not quite spreading into my community or my section of Oregon, and am I feeling properly represented here? This person definitely had a little bit of a split. Like this is the first issue where they really saw that it was impacting them and their community, their farming practice. So that's awesome to hear, and I hope that it can continue into further sessions, that we do broaden our reach to our entire community throughout the Oregon state. I feel this year that I had the authority and connections necessary to make a difference. This is exactly related to that self-advocacy piece. People are gaining that knowledge and that power to feel empowered on stage when giving verbal testimony, is what this was related to. When did you learn the most? This was the second question that I asked in one-on-one interviews to see not only what engaged people with FOP, but when they were actually being educated themselves during our session and with our education. Watching the recording hearing and on how to give oral testimony is what pushed me into taking the next step in my advocacy. There is definitely a lot of fear factor with coming forward and speaking for yourself, especially on key issues where you want to tell your story, but you also want to influence a person to make the best decision based off of what you are saying. And that's terrifying. It's scary to be up on stage and to communicate with someone. And so I can definitely understand how having recorded hearings could be a way for someone to gain that step and take that step into doing something like that. However, another key piece on this was that a lot of people responded that they wanted to see more recorded hearings and more recorded information. I'm going to respond to that a little bit later in this presentation. It is in community meetings that you can learn who your representatives really are. So this piece was super interesting, and I think it was really a key piece in writing the policy report, is that you can definitely see a different side of a person in in-person communications. And this was the key point that this person was saying, is that they learned the most when they could actually talk to their legislator. And so they wanted FOF to create more opportunities to engage one-on-one and to build that relationship. And those relationships are very important in policy and advocacy. Subcommittee meetings let your voice truly be heard and learn perspectives on what people are actually dealing with. There are people there that are raising important issues. This was in relation to focus groups that we conduct before the session, so that we can gain perspectives from everyone on their specific topics. And this person had a really interesting point that they felt like you could definitely be overpowered when we were segmenting the state based off region. And so we are going to be switching this going forward in FOF to be more topic focused rather than region focused, so that topics that are in agreement rather than topics that can be overpowered in a specific region can overlap throughout the regions to gain a greater level of support, to hopefully let more voices be heard and gain more perspectives on one issue, so that issue can be brought through to a higher level to gain our priorities support in policy sessions. And the final question I asked was, how did the 2025 session impact you? The connection between legislature and producers and consumers is significantly lacking. The issues small farms are dealing with are not being talked about enough. This is where our representation really matters. So this person was talking about how they wanted FOF and the communication connections with FOF to uplift and show the real stories that farmers are facing. So this was a little bit of a split key between how having our blog take direct farmer stories and uplift them and show them through our blog, and then also on-site tours and engaging with real people and real stories on the land. It is never more useful to water a lawn than to sell food, and this is going to be a complete game changer. This is in relation to HB 3372, which this was an absolute win for this session, and it's great to see people being really impacted by this going forward once it launches in January. Well water access increases the availability of local food for the community, and more deliciousness is key. I'm sure almost everyone here can agree with that one. So now that we have gathered all of the responses from our community, we wanted to go into what the actual implementation plan is. So where are we going with this? What is this for, and how is it actually going to influence what FOF does going into the coming sessions? And it is unfortunate that the first one was gathered prior to a short session here. There's not so much that we can do in this upcoming session, but we are definitely going to be taking takeaways from this going forward into all of our upcoming sessions. The first thing that I wanted to say is that it was pretty clear through this survey and through my one-on-one that it was a very stark mix between people who have been with FOF for a long time and have a long standing with us, and people who are very, very new to FOF. So with that, I just want to say welcome to the family. So there's many new faces in the network, and we are really, really excited to have you. Another key takeaway that popped up many times in both the survey and in one-on-ones is that a lot of our community wants to self-advocate, and FOF is going to be working really hard to create opportunities to meet with your legislators, to learn how policy works and how to view policy on OLIS, to create different advocacy guides and policy guides for FOF to self-advocate. However, we do want to say that FOF is always going to be here for our community to represent them in a pinch. From feedback into action. So respondents identified some key areas in which they want FOF to improve and provide them with the tools and support necessary to sustain their farming community and create real change. The 3 areas of focus that we decided that we could take from feedback into action is with the policy creation process, the obligation that FOF has to protect our members, and events, community building, and farm tours. So a key point that I want to emphasize here is that the policy creation process is 100% determined by our focus groups and surveys, which are going to be coming up in February and March of 2026. This year within our surveys and focus groups, we are going to be focusing on that topic-driven approach rather than the regional approach. So it is going to be a little bit of a twist, and you'll see a lot more of that written out in the report. So you can learn what we're going to be changing there with the focus groups. But a lot of people were wanting a greater level of transparency in what the policy creation process actually is. And so there's going to be a series of blog posts and some advocacy guides created in the new year to lay that out again. We have done that in the past, but it's going to be something that we push forward into this next session. Next is an obligation to protect our members. So one of the key points that we received in our survey from multiple respondents was that they wanted to see some more recorded information, recorded hearings, recorded focus groups, things where if they couldn't be in person, they wanted to learn from these experiences and learn from these meetings. And FOF is under a great obligation to protect our members. So there are certain places where a recording is definitely going to create a barrier for what information can be shared in these meetings. And it's not always possible for FOF to share this information because there could be some sensitive information shared that people don't want to be publicly available. And all of those sessions, when recorded, are going to be a part of the legislature. So once they are recorded, they are in the legal system and they are recorded under that legal system. And so there are certain hearings and areas where they can't speak truthfully if they're recorded. And so that's where FOF has an obligation to keep that contained and to protect our members from the process in that way. Finally, there was a lot of emphasis on farm tours and in-person events. A key here is just that legislators do not attend events outside of Salem during the session. And so there's definitely these key swing periods that we need to take advantage of to get legislators involved on site and in tours. But then in those periods, they might not have the impact or influence needed as would be seen during a session. So where an on-site tour on session could really influence someone's perspective on a certain bill, when it is out of session, it definitely could lose that edge a little bit. Hopefully it could be carried forward, But it's just going to be an interesting two-sided area where we definitely want to create more events and community building for members, but these farm tours, we want them to have influence and have impact and to carry those farmer stories forward. So it's going to be, we're definitely going to work on that. And of course, we're going to have our rally day in March as well. So there's definitely some community engagement efforts going on there. So please watch our blog and our emails for events and community engagement opportunities going forward. Next steps. So what next? After this report has been is out, it is public now, what changes are already in motion? So we are going to be completing blog posts going forward. I have a full list of our January blog posts that is going to be in the report. And then weekly session meetings. We have our weekly Muck Boots in the Capitol meetings. If you do not already know about these, we host them weekly. They are live and recorded on our YouTube page as well. Realities and policy possibilities. So going forward, we're definitely going to have to weigh the legislative landscape. So there are some things and some responses from the survey and from the interviews that we can't directly implement going forward as we are watching what is happening in the landscape currently and going into short session, deciding what happens going forward. For example, like we can't have between long session and short session, those focus groups, it's too short of a time to host focus groups to create priority issues for the short session. So we have to take some creative liberties there to push things going forward that we think is going to best support and represent our community. And then civic engagement training returns. I also have a full list of this in the report of which trainings we are going to conduct during this next year in 2026. We're going to have some OLIS trainings. We're going to do relationship with legislator trainings and more. And we can stop the recording there.